The gut-liver link and the dangers of leaky gut. How are they linked? Today, I want to talk to you about optimizing your microbiome and liver health for better brain and hormonal health. So, throughout every topic that I've been discussing, especially recently when I've been talking about hormones and brain health, I've weaved in the influence of the tiny bugs that inhabit our bodies, specifically the ones that take residence in the digestive tract. And this is for good reason. It's because these microbes have such a wide impact on our health impact outcomes. And if you want to balance your mood and you want to balance your endocrine system, you can't ignore the importance of the gut microbiota. In fact, the more that researchers are digging into all of the different things that the gut microbiome, which let me just define for you quickly here, is the collection of all the microbes. So this could be bacteria, virus, fungi that live in a specific area in our body, as well as their genes in the intestines. So it's the gut microbiome. The more that we're studying about that, the more we're seeing that these guys, these little critters, have a huge impact on both our physical and our psychological health. And the more we're awed by just how much we didn't know and how much we're discovering. So, what this has led to is conventional integrative medicine kind of calling a truce, right? And they've concluded that what naturopaths have been spouting for years, that when in doubt, treat the gut, is kind of true, because you need a healthy digestive tract to maintain health, resiliency, positive mood, and to age gracefully. Now, it might not necessarily solve all of the symptomology or disease, but having a healthy digestive tract definitely is needed to actually achieve your overall health goals. So, let's just look at a little bit about what the microbes in the gastrointestinal tract system do. I want to link that to all of the different things that our hormones do and how those two are interlinked. Then we're going to talk about the liver. And we're going to talk about, again, just kind of reviewing about the many different functions of the liver. I want to discuss to you this liver-gut axis, the link between bioproduction in the liver and these gut microbes. And also, then next, the major topic is the importance of the intestinal barrier integrity or leaky gut and how that's linked to the liver. We'll go through causes of leaky gut, the consequences of leaky gut, and then I'll just summarize that all for you. So that's everything we're going to discuss in this video in hopefully less than a half an hour, and you will be totally schooled in the gut microbiome and liver health and how those two are linked. Because not a lot of people are talking about this. I don't think the liver is getting enough attention other than its link to detoxification, which is important. There's many other different things the liver does and interacts with. All right, so let's get started. Let's start with, first of all, looking at why this is so important. What does our gut do? Specifically, what do these microbes that live in our gut do? So what they do is just kind of a brief overview of some of their broadest, most important functions are synthesizing, assimilating, and absorbing nutrients, metabolizing, excreting toxins and waste. They house over 70% of our immune cells. They produce over 90% of our serotonin and other vital neurotransmitters and neurochemicals. Now, it might not be the exact neurotransmitters that make it to your brain, but remember, these neurotransmitters actually have an effect in the peripheral nervous system, which also impacts our brain processing. They regulate hormonal excretion. They communicate with our brain in this gut-brain link, right, through this vagal nerve, which starts in the gut and goes all the way to the brain, right? They affect different chemical signaling pathways along that way. And then even the skin, there's even a skin gut axis. So we look at all of those different functions, and then we look at the functions that our hormones have, which is our metabolism, such as regulating blood pressure, blood sugar, temperature, cellular energy, reproduction, fertility, sex drive, their role in growth and development, how they impact responses to our injury, stress, infections, and environmental factors, how hormones impact our mood and our digestive function. See how those two are linked, right? And then if we look at the microbiome hormone liver health link, you take into account the microbiota and hormones and all their impact, and the fact that the liver is influencing the hormones are influencing the liver, and how this interaction between the liver and the gut that I discussed in my previous video in metabolizing hormones is also associated. You can see why we need to pay attention to our digestive tract and it being healthy if we're going to achieve the optimal life without these bodily woes that we desire. So in case you've missed it, I've highlighted some of these major topics in previous videos or articles, and there will be linked in this video description links if you want to go back and go ahead and get the details. But I'm going to do my best to connect the dots and summarize it for you in this video. And there'll also be an article link with more resources and references for you if you want to dive in even deeper, which I hope you do because this stuff is pretty darn cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We talked about the microbiome. We talked about the hormones and all of the different roles that they have in our body. Let's get started on this liver-gut link. So first of all, remember that our liver is a superstar multitasker. It is responsible for managing over 500 different functions while interacting with virtually every organ in the body. Kind of a stressful job, but the liver can do it. And although it's most well known for detoxification and digestion, our liver does a lot more. And these include regulating most of the chemicals in our body, processing all of the blood that leaves the stomach and intestines. It breaks down, balances, stores, and creates nutrients. It expels bile, which helps us carry away waste. It produces proteins that regulate our metabolism. It regulates signaling compounds, hormone levels, nutrients, and also various other metabolic functions. It helps us metabolize drugs and harmful compounds, either from the environment or when our bodies have broken down certain things. And it repurposes them into non-toxic byproducts to be excreted. It helps us regulate, metabolize, activate, inactivate, and convert hormones as needed. It interacts with this gut microbiome. Talked about that on a previous video and how this is important for estrogen recycling and also removing the estrogen excess from the body, right? So we don't get this estrogen dominant scenario. And if we look at the liver and our microbiome, again, anything that causes a dysregulation in either is going to cause a dysregulation in the other, as well as hormonal deregulation, brain health issues, mind, body, gut, brain, liver hormonal link to the mood, as well as many other bodily symptoms and diseases. So we need to have knowledge of this liver-gut axis and how it becomes dysfunctional, how it becomes rejuvenated, so we can enhance and empower our health. All right, so what is the liver-gut axis? Obviously, that's probably a connection between the liver and the gut. If that's, something that is as basic you need to know, that's probably good enough because most people don't even know that. But there is these important two-way communications that are going on, right? The gut brain, which is one of the most popular right now. I talked about the gut thyroid, which also isn't getting enough attention. And now we have this bidirectional relationship between the gut and the liver. And there are critical interactions where their functions affect one another, and they also play vital roles in impacting other organ systems. So different things like genetics, nutrients, microbial byproducts that are made, lifestyle factors, and liver bile acids, they all regulate, influence, and help regulate the metabolism, the immunity, and the health of both the gut microbiome and the liver. So these are the different factors that influence the health of this. Now, the portal vein is a blood vessel that carries blood from the gastrointestinal tract, the gallbladder, the pancreas, and the spleen, all of these areas to the liver. And that is what serves as the bidirectional connecting link between the liver and the gut. Now, this feedback loop between the gut and the liver is also called enterohepatic circulation. Entero is for intestine, hepatic is for liver, and it determines the amount of bile acids produced. And these bile acids are necessary, again, for effective detoxification, also for fat metabolism. Now, there's this interaction between bile production and gut microbes because the portal vein takes the metabolites made in the intestines, these different breakdown products that the microbiome produced, A lot of them are signaling molecules. They have different other functions in the body, and they take it to the liver, and this stimulates the liver once it sees these metabolites to produce bile as well as antibodies. So bile and these immune substances, which are antibodies, are then cycled back into the digestive tract. We're creating this little cycle here, and they can further be metabolized by the microbes. And it's actually within that gut lining that the bile acids are transformed into secondary bile acids. So you have the primary biliary bile acids. Let me say that again. The primary bile acids, which affect cholesterol metabolism, lipid digestion, and host microbe interactions. And then you have the secondary bile acids, and those actually influence the inflammatory response. And too much can actually lead to diseases such as colon cancer. So thankfully, we have gut microbes that can produce metabolites such as short chain fatty acids that balance out this inflammation process and promote a healthy gut. Remember, we do need a little inflammation. We need balance. So if there's a disturbance between this process, the circulation, right, between this delivery of the microbial metabolites and then the recycling back into the gut from the liver with the bile and the antibodies, there's going to compromise to the gut and the liver health. And it also can be that if there's a disturbance in the microbes, what it can do is it can compromise the filtering of these different products in the gut lining and the gut vascular barrier, which is known as the GVB. Now we're getting into the liver-gut connection a little more here, because the GVB is what regulates those metabolites produced in the gut microbiome to actually enter into the portal vein. So the GVB is like the doorway here, and that is lying within the intestinal lining. And within the intestinal lining is the intestinal barrier, 3 layers actually, that are going to form this intact barrier that selectively filters through helpful molecules into the gut and prevents potentially dangerous compounds to enter, like bacteria and viruses, into the bloodstream. But it wants things that we want, like water and nutrients, to actually get into the gut, right? To use them, metabolize them, and process them. So one of the things besides digestion is the intestinal barrier is helping us with is this immune defense. So it's going to maintain gut tolerance by separating these gut microbiota from our human immune cells. And this fulfills 2 kind of what seems like opposing functions, because it allows for a peaceful coexistence between these intestinal microbes and our whole and what our body needs for nourishment, right? It doesn't want to attack everything that's coming in as dangerous or foreign. We need a tolerant immune system to the good, and not to create excessive inflammation every time something that we need comes through the intestinal lining. But we also need to allow for an inflammatory and defensive response if something comes in that's an actual threat or different pathogens. So a healthy digestive tract has 3 layers, like I said, of defense to do this job. We have the external mucus layer, and that's comprised of the microbiota on the outside, and then inside that layer are sparse bacteria, but there's peptides, which are like components of proteins, and those have antibacterial functions, again, preventing like little infections along the intestinal lining. We have the middle intercellular junction layer. So this is a thin layer of intestinal cells, and there's 3 sets of these junctions that form the apical junctional complex. If you want to know their names for Scrabble or something cool to impress your friends, we have the tight junctions. You want to get really into it, you can call it the zona occludens. We have the adherens junction, again, the zonola adherens, and the actual desmos. Okay, so those are what comprise the apical junctional complex. Say that 7 times fast. This supports the brush border of the intestinal barrier, and it helps regulate the function and transport in between the different cells, right? And then there's the outer gut vascular barrier. So this is the GVB. So this is a final defensive shield which regulates the release of the microbial metabolites into the port of circulation, which I discussed. So that's the 3rd layer. Now, if we have a breakdown there of the GVB, obviously it's going to impact this enterohepatic, right, the circulation between the liver and the gut. We can break down in any part of the intestinal barrier, the mucus layer, the tight junctions, or this GVB. And things that can cause this leaky gut or this intestinal permeability or breakdown of the barrier are various. But some of the things I look for is if people are on certain medications, if they have an excessive stress response. Stress can like literally kind of eat away at the gut lining. Excessive exercise can cause a leaky gut. Lifestyle factors, toxic exposures, inflammatory dietary compounds. Remember, that's going to be different for everyone, what they're responding to, what's particularly inflammatory for them. They just won't feel good on certain things because their body likely doesn't have the nutrients that it needs to break these foods down, or it's just not optimal for them. And I do this in a very non-judgmental, non-diet way when we're figuring that out, just as an aside. Alcohol can cause leaky gut, infections, and food sensitivities. Again, a lot of times I find that's related to specific enzymes that just aren't optimized because of various dysfunctions and in gut breakdown throughout the years, or digestive disorders. And again, once you treat the root cause, a lot of times things get better. People are on these restrictive diets. Again, another side soapbox. We're not going to talk about that today. Maybe later, another video. But the important thing to remember is if you say leaky gut to a conventional physician or a researcher, they're not going to like that. The correct term is intestinal permeability. And it's not like you have leaky gut, you have a disease. It's actually a symptom, right? It can be an underlying process that causes a disease. So that's exactly what happens because intestinal permeability or leaky gut is gaining more attention in the research as one of the major factors in some of these different clinical issues. This is things such as chronic inflammatory conditions, things such as celiac disease, Crohn's disease, autoimmune disorders, neurological disorders, and mood disorders are all being linked to this intestinal permeability. So if we have this breakdown in the gut barrier, it can't prevent these larger unfiltered particles from crossing into the bloodstream. So you see where this could allow these detrimental substances to enter into the circulation, right? And that's going to cause an inflammatory effect. Now, specifically, if the GVB is affected, it's going to cause these inflammatory metabolites or microbes to spread throughout the body and recycle back into the liver, which is actually filtering out most of our blood in the intestines and just causing this mass array of things that we don't want and affecting our liver health. So if we dial this all in, we've talked about a lot, right? We've talked about the many function of the gut microbiota, why that's important, how the liver and all of its different functions are important, kind of weaved in hormone regulation because that's one of the main specialties of mine. But remember, we can't have healthy hormones without a healthy gut and a healthy liver, and the liver impacts the hormones as well as the gut. All of these are interconnected. And if we look at this different connecting points between the gut and the liver, there's this portal vein, which actually carries things from the gut to the liver back to the gut. There can be a breakdown in this intestinal barrier that allows the release of these different compounds into the liver from the gut. And that can cause a lot of inflammation and havoc in the body. This breakdown in this barrier would be a component of leaky gut. So did I do that? Did I clear up for you exactly this liver gut axis, what it is, how leaky gut is related to the health of our liver, our gut, and our overall function, and why it's important to know it? Because what I want to do is I want to follow up with this information and then give you applications. How can we address leaky gut? How can we actually live a liver healthy lifestyle? How can we focus more in the liver? We've focused a lot on the gut and integrative health the past many years. A lot of people know the importance, or they're starting to, and I think it's getting a lot more press with the microbiome. Now I'd like to bring it into focusing onto other avenues, not just the gut, but how they interact with the gut and how everything in the body is connected. So a lot of times with naturopathic and functional medicine, you're not just addressing one thing, you're addressing and looking at how everything is interacting together and how that is contributing to your symptoms, which may seem seemingly disconnected. They're actually all connected if you know these pathways and what we call these different systemic connections, okay? So I hope that was helpful. Please be sure to comment with any questions or feedback in the video description or wherever you're watching this or reading the article. I will read all the comments and comment and reply myself. If you have any additional questions, you can also reach out to me. My website is breakfreemedicine.com. I also have in the video description additional resources that are available to you on my website. There's free resources, especially on essential oils, which is one of the major modalities I use for liver, gut, hormonal health, and for everything else is integrated into a whole wellness plan. I also offer courses for both practitioners that have CEUs as well as consumers on essential oils and applying them in clinical applications. So be sure to check that out and any other of my many free blogs and videos, and keep educating yourself and keep making your health and and especially your emotional health and your brain health a priority so that you can live a happier life and fuel your passion and do all the things that you desire. Till next time, have a wonderful rest of your day or evening.